challenging part of reporting this story was finding men willing to sit down with a reporter and talk about a very personal struggle with pornography and in some cases sexual addiction. I tried several avenues through sex therapists, 12-step groups and online message boards dedicated to overcoming pornography addiction, but in the end only a handful were willing to sit down and meet, and none of them were willing to have their names printed in the newspaper.
You know, what is it out there in the environment? It doesn't have to be a pornographic website that gets someone interested in looking at more porn. It could be a trigger out in the world. It could be a billboard that has a scantily clad woman on it. It could be an advertisement on a TV show that had, nothing to do with porn, but, suddenly an ad comes up for a phone sex line or something like that. There are triggers, and it appears in reporting this story that identifying those triggers is the first step to treatment, regardless of what form and shape that treatment actually takes in the end.
The men I did talk to all deal with a tremendous amount of shame, and understandably they're afraid that their friends, neighbors, or colleagues will find out about this obsessive secret life they've been living. Today it's become much more accepted to tell someone that you're a recovering alcoholic, but that's still not the case for pornography addicts. One of the men, Rich, said he would wait till his wife went to sleep and then spend hours on the internet or in front of the television watching pornography. Now, this is a man who said that he was a drug addict and an alcoholic for years, but in the end, it was pornography and sexual addiction that was the hardest for him to overcome.
Well, actually, quite a bit is hanging in the balance in deciding whether this is an addiction or not. For instance, it could have a bearing on whether insurance companies, will cover treatment for sex addiction per se. It'll have an effect on whether someone can file for a disability claim, claiming that, I'm addicted to internet sex, I'm addicted to internet pornography, and I therefore have a disability and should qualify for benefits under the law. If it's found to be a true addiction, it'll also put a big onus on psychiatrists to learn about the disorder, diagnose the disorder, and they'd actually be on the hook if one of their clients or one of their patients goes out and commits a crime, and they didn't diagnose the sex addiction that may have been relevant to that crime. They could be in quite a bit of hot water.
It was really telling in just having the sit-down interviews with them. A couple of them took place in a public place. We're in a restaurant, and almost the entire interview took place at a whisper. And, waitresses were walking by, people were sitting on the tables next to us, and you could tell, even though they were saying they wanted to overcome this sense of shame, that shame was very much dictating how they were able to, talk to me.
The place most people turn to decide if something is a bona fide addiction is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's put out by the American Psychiatric Association. And, every 10 years or so, things are taken away and added to the list. For example, up until about the 1970s, homosexuality was on that list as a disorder. So it's not without the realm of possibility that this could actually be added somewhere down the line.
The people I spoke to, they definitely refer to themselves as addicts, and to be clear, that these weren't men who occasionally glimpsed at a pornography site. These were men who spent hours secretly on the internet, and over a period of decades, in some instances, lying to their wives, losing sleep, jeopardizing their jobs, and every one of them, in trying to quit, relapsed several times. In the end, I think one of the biggest incentives for people to speak to the newspaper was to try to pull this addiction out of the shadows a little bit. There is seriously a tremendous amount of shame that these guys experience, but they also want to get the word out that there is an option for recovery, that you can overcome this addiction, and just to spread the word that there are 12-step groups meeting, there are sex therapists who specialize in helping people overcome pornography addiction. So I guess in the end they want it to be more widely accepted on par with alcoholism, where it's not so taboo to speak about it as something you struggle with in public.
And I know just from trying to get people to speak to me as well that it's not easy. I mean, the people want to know what's going to, how am I going to be reflected? How am I going to be identified? How is this problem going to be framed? And, I went through several iterations of trying to get people to talk to me and setting up possible meetings, having folks that work with these people in a clinical sense kind of say, all right, there's a reporter that's going to do a story about this. And they all clam up eventually, in my experience. It's just that difficult, and there's that much of a margin of potential shame, that comes with this. It simply isn't at the level of some of the other addictions that people are much more comfortable culturally coming forward with and admitting to.
To give one example, I found an internet message board that was dedicated solely to recovering from pornography addiction, and I put a message post up there soliciting an interview, telling them that we're taking a very serious approach to this topic, and 100 people viewed that over the period of a couple of weeks, and I got absolutely zero responses.